Mysteries of universe have always fascinated man. He kept on observing the sky, inventing more and more powerful telescopes to look into the endless depths. In that endless vastness, Earth, our home planet, is only a tiny speck. And as on today, it is the only known watery or blue planet. And water, the source of all forms of life. Earth, where plants, animals and humans live. Millions of years of evolution has made the earth a place fit enough to live. Let's try to piece together the history of Earth. Scientists believe that Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and life began about 3.8 billion years ago. It is within the first billion years of existence of Earth that conditions became congenial for life to begin. Unlike our present-day atmosphere, the primitive atmosphere lacked oxygen. However, all chemical building blocks necessary for life were present. But no one knows how Earth passed into a state where life actually began. Life originated in what is called primordial soup, which covered entire Earth's surface. First, anaerobic bacteria, which lived without atmospheric oxygen, getting energy from hydrogen sulfide and other compounds, evolved and rose to surface. And then tiny single-celled cyanobacteria or blue-green algae capable of reproduction came into existence. They were protected from the destructive ultraviolet radiation as they were underwater. Had there been free oxygen in the atmosphere at that time, these microorganisms would have got burned instantly. Oxygen would have oxidized all the cells inside out. Then about 3.5 billion years ago, thick velvety mats of algae trapped sunlight and started converting carbon dioxide dissolved in seawater into carbon-rich molecules for food and for energy that was required for their survival. In this process, the byproduct oxygen began to collect in the atmosphere. Over the next 1 billion years, oxygen saturated the sea. An oxygen-rich atmosphere evolved through photosynthesis. Gradually, oxygen level in Earth's lower atmosphere approached the current concentration of about 20%, and thus oxygen concentration was no longer a constraint on the creation of evolution of next generation of life forms. Oxygen also reacted with ultraviolet radiation to form ozone. A thin layer of ozone in the upper atmosphere formed a protective blanket, which filtered out harmful ultraviolet radiation emitted by the sun. This ozone layer protected the emerging primordial life. And then between 3.5 to 3.4 billion years ago, some cells evolved into large assemblies of specialized components, perhaps by ingesting free-floating prokaryotes. Oxygen-consuming prokaryotes became these new cells, mitochondria, the powerhouse of aerobic respiration. Chloroplast, the descendants of photosynthetic prokaryotes, carried on photosynthesis inside some of the new cells. These efficient cellular machines accelerated the pace of evolution. The cellular partnership not only survived oxygen crisis in its initial period, they actually thrived. Between 2 to 1.6 billion years ago, with its gene-bearing nucleus, eukaryotes, a cellular apparatus far more intricate than anything that had evolved before, made its first appearance. These early eukaryotes left behind tiny, one-celled fossils that looked like this. Evolution seemed to be proceeding in slow motion because organisms multiplied themselves asexually by producing genetically identical copies of themselves as bacteria do today. Multi-celled animals diversified, and cooperation involving complex biotic interaction among cells began. Between 1.6 billion to 1 billion years ago, the pace of evolution picked up dramatically. One of the reasons for the spark of biological revolution could be the origin of sexual reproduction. Eukaryotes began reproducing genetic material from two parents. These new combinations accelerated variation in genetic pool and led to proliferation of new life forms and a far more rapid rate of change. Around 650 million years ago, on a planet which was already 4 billion years old, a supercontinent started breaking into pieces which were half submerged under deep sea. A few more million years passed, and around 600 million years ago, Earth looked something like this. During the period from 540 to 500 million years ago, geologists call it Cambrian period of Paleozoic, that is, early life era. Tectonic plates started drifting. The largest mass in this drift was Gondwana land. The idea that continents of Paleo world were once fused was championed by a German scientist named Alfred Wegener. He was a meteorologist and a geologist. He propounded this theory in 1912. In 1965, theory of plate tectonics was propounded by a Canadian geophysicist called John Turo Wilson, and it is during this period that the continental drift theory or the concept gained widespread acceptability among Earth scientists. During this period, aquatic life forms, meaning soft-bodied creatures like sea urchins and jellyfish, evolved. These were followed by animals with hard exoskeleton, such as many-legged trilobites and worms like greptolites. The Cambrian period is extremely important because it is from here that our earliest fossil records begin. During the Ordovician period, that is from 500 to 440 million years ago, the continents were mainly in southern hemisphere. Marine invertebrate animals such as clams and mollusks, which filtered tiny prey from water, were abundant. The ancestors of mosses and ferns colonized the wet terrestrial environment. But they were still relatively small. However, the story of life on Earth, which was developing more and more complex, has been punctuated by numerous minor and at least 5 major mass extinctions. About 440 million years ago, during Ordovician period, another mass extinction took place. During this period, about 75% of all animal species were wiped out. This was triggered by a prolonged glaciation. During the Silurian period, that is from about 440 to 400 million years ago, the northern continents, which were close enough, joined each other. However, the general position of continents did not change much. Around this time, first jawless bony fishes with armored heads appeared in marine life. Atmosphere protected from ultraviolet radiation became more congenial to life. Significant changes happen on land, where first terrestrial arthropod scorpions, millipedes, and wingless insects flourished. During the Devonian period from 400 to 345 million years ago, Earth continued to be divided into northern and southern landmass, both of which were slowly moving northward. There was a great evolutionary radiation of corals and shelled squids like cephalopods. Seaweeds were abundant. Fishes diversified in variety and numbers as jaw forms replaced jawless ones. Lungfishes were probably the first air-breathing animals with backbones to walk on muddy land. Land plants became common, and some reached the size of palm trees with strong stems. End of the Devonian period was really harsh. It saw mass extinction of about 80% of all marine life, including many forms of fishes and reef-building invertebrates. During the Carboniferous period, that is starting from 345 to 290 million years ago, terrestrial animals such as snails, centipedes, and scorpions flourished in great variety and abundance. Insects, the first airborne animals, evolved wings, which enabled them to move readily among the tall and structurally complex plants such as ferns and horsetails. Crawling from the water, amphibians, the ancestors of all four-footed vertebrates, became better adapted to terrestrial existence. Some of them were large animals more than 5 meters long, quite unlike any surviving today. During the Permian period, that is starting from 290 to 240 million years ago. The land mass had congregated and formed a supercontinent which was called Pangaea. In fact, it has traveled the equator and extended to poles and occupied about 1/3 of the surface of Earth. North America and Eurasia made up Pangaea's north segment called Laurasia. The other continents clustered the southern segment. Gondwana land in the southern part. To the east was the Thetis Ocean, ancestor of Mediterranean. Around the supercontinent was Panthalessic Ocean, ancestor of Pacific. Much of the Pangaea was dry and hot and experienced extreme harsh climate. However, this was the time when in fresh water, marine life diversified and bony fishes evolved. And modern insects, including dragonflies with wingspans measuring up to 2 feet, the largest insects that ever flourished. By the end of the Permian period, reptiles greatly outnumbered amphibians. Earth experienced a sharp drop in average temperature. The result was Permian Ice Age. Large glaciers formed on Earth, in fact, largest that ever have existed on Earth, causing a drop in sea level. The shallow seas dried up, and the marine life that lived there became extinct. This led to worst catastrophic crash of all times. The Permian mass extinction began, which claimed 90% of all species on land and in ocean. And nobody knows how did it happen. Some scientists think that acid rain could have turned the surface of the earth into an acid bath. The ubiquitous trilobites became extinct. This was the only mass extinction which brought the long triumphal march of insects to almost a complete grinding halt. It appears to have taken place fast, in fact, probably in less than 1 million years. However, the end of Permian mass extinction is an important turning point, not only in the history of evolution of life, but also in the history of evolution of planet Earth. We'll keep talking about evolution, but only in the next episode.